So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for a SOPA Research Forum, which is entitled I'm Not My Hair, the Criminalization of Black Hair. And today, it's my pleasure to have this mix of great panelists. We have academicians, we have doctoral students, we have former graduates, principals on the line. It's going to be a great discussion here today. And I'm going to let each one of them introduce themselves. I guess we can start now. So I'm Dr. Jasmine Drake. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Administration of Justice here in the Barbara Jordan Mickey Leland School of Public Affairs. And I'm also a Texas Forensic Science Commissioner, as well as a Center for Justice Research Fellow.
And good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jennifer Bourgeois, and I'm a doctoral student in the Department of Administration of Justice here at TSU, and I'm also a graduate research fellow at the Center for Justice Research. Glad to see everybody.
And hello, everyone. My name is Denise Brown. I'm a second-year doctoral student here at the Barbara Jordan Mickey Leland School of Public Affairs here at Texas Southern University. I am also a doctoral fellow at the Center for Justice Research. Thank you for having me. I look forward to our discussion today.
I believe I'm next. My name is Alicia Daniel. I'm a doctoral student at Texas Southern in the Administration of Justice Department, and I'm also a faculty member at Clark Atlanta University in Atlanta, Georgia.
Hello, everyone. I am Robin Jackson. I am an assistant professor at Prairie View University in the Department of Justice Studies, College of Juvenile Justice and Psychology, and I am not a research fellow or anything like that at Texas Southern, but I know a lot of people that are there, so I'm happy to be a part of this. And thank you for having me.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Melissa Quende, and I'm a doctoral student at the Administration of Justice Department at TSU. Thank you for having me.
Is it me? Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Angelica Lunca. I am a former undergraduate research fellow at the Center for Justice Research and a recent graduate, as recent as a year ago, I guess, but TSU in the administration of.
Is it me? Okay, I'm Demika Simmons. I'm the proud principal here at Marlin Middle School. I'm also a doctoral candidate with the Administration of Justice, and I am super, super elated to be amongst so many stellar individuals today to present a very pressing topic. So thank you for having me.
All right, so for today, just a bit of housekeeping. This session will be recorded, so individuals can look at this later. We'll have the video available. We also have the chat box, so I want to encourage you to utilize the chat box if you have any questions that you want to ask. I want this to serve as an informal discussion where everyone can kind of talk about the criminalization of Black hair and how policies have been used as far as in the academic arenas, as well as the professional arenas, to discriminate against people of color. So I know I have my own experiences. I will be serving as the moderator, but I really wanted to hear from this group of wonderful panelists on some of their experiences and some of their outlooks on how we can, disable this, barrier to success for our youth and for people of color. And so the first thing I wanted to talk about is the Crown Act. And so I know we had the recent passing of the Crown Act by the U.S. House of Representatives. It has not passed the Senate, but several states have adopted the Crown Act, which bans race-based hair discrimination. And so we are looking at that Crown Act as a way to actually talk to policymakers when we're talking about criminal justice reform efforts, that this could be one area where we could disassemble that school to prison pipeline that we see. And so we'll get into talking a little bit about the school disciplinary policies that may not be fair for some of our students, and just a discussion on, the historical context of discrimination of Black hair, and even what does that mean within our own culture. So the first set of questions I would like to ask, and I want the audience to know if you have a question. I have some set questions to kind of drive the conversation, but I really look forward to hearing some questions from you or some comments that you may have. So I know that I've read the Brookings report, and I think Jennifer Bourgeois worked on it as well as Dr. Howard Henderson, but I've also seen work that Melissa Quinde has done in the area of school disciplinary reports and actions, as well as Jennifer Bourgeois. So can you ladies, and you guys can take it, whoever you decide to take it, can you describe some of the work that you've done at CJR as it relates to school discipline?
Yes, thank you for the question. I'll kind of kick it off and then pass it to Melissa. I was working on a project. It started a couple years ago where I was looking at school discipline in the 19 school districts in Harris County, or specifically Houston Independent School District and some other school districts. But there were a total of 19 school districts in Harris County. And what we started to realize that across the board, Black individuals, Black children were being disciplined at a disparate rate. And that rate was around about the same rate that the numbers we see floating around on the internet, 4 times more likely to be suspended and things like that. We also quickly realized data. One, having access to the data, as well as the data was aggregate data. So we knew the number of children that were being suspended in ISS, in-school suspension, and out-of-school suspension, and things of that nature, but we did not have access to disaggregate data. And that's where Melissa came along with her project, and then both of our projects kind of merged together. She had access to disaggregate data for one particular rural school district in the Texas area, and we both have been working on that together. So I'll let her talk a little bit more about her project.
Hi, thanks, Jen. So in the small rural city that we were handling together, we discovered that a lot of the Black population of students was accounted for barely like 20% of the student population, yet they accounted for the highest amount of student suspensions. And usually you would expect the student suspensions to be for serious offenses, like maybe bringing restricted substances to school, stuff like that. But most of the suspensions were for discretionary reasons, like maybe using the phone, and dress violations. Most of the dress violations had to do with hair. That's what we discovered. The Black students were 14 times more likely to be suspended for dress violations, usually hairstyles, compared to the white students. And they were 16 times more likely to be suspended than the Hispanic counterparts for the same reason. So, yeah. It was quite, I haven't really experienced discrimination because of my hair. I've been fortunate enough to travel around, so people haven't really paid so much attention to me. But looking at this data, I got to see that, yeah, Black students get unusual treatment for things that are natural. You know, our hair isn't like other students' hair, but we're expected to conform to how the white students' hair is naturally.
So as a follow-up, so when we're kind of talking about the criminalization of Black hair in these school disciplinary, policies. How do they intersect?
Well, it falls underneath, as Melissa mentioned, dress code. That's where some of the discipline falls underneath. When it comes to hair violation, it falls underneath dress code violations. And one of the most recent popular cases was the young man that was suspended from Barbers Hills ISD. And that gained a lot of media attention in 2019 due to him refusing to cut his dreadlocks. the school district did not want to allow him to graduate. So once again, a lot of times the hair violations underneath that dress code violation, which all of that is considered discretionary or subjective.
Yeah, and sometimes it even carries on to the workplace. You would think it only happens with students, with kids, but even as adults, I have a classmate that moved here. She was working in corporate, and the first time she wore her natural hair to work, her female colleagues thought it was okay to come touch her hair without even permission and stuff like that, and people were treating her differently. So you see that because of the way our hair is, we get this kind of treatment everywhere.
I just want to interject real quick. It's to kind of piggyback off of what was just said about the workplace. I can remember back when I was a correctional officer, and it wasn't just natural hairstyles. It was, you know, I don't know if you guys remember the updos that would get really, really, really high. They wouldn't move, but they had some height to them. I remember a couple of colleagues, female colleagues, who would be told to go home or would get written up because of their hair. The rule was it had to be off of your collar. Their hair was off of their collar, but our supervisors at the time would take issue with the types of hairstyles that they had. So yeah, it's not just natural hair, it's also even, you know, the different types of styles that we may have.
That's true. We also noticed, Jen and I, when we were looking at the school discipline data, that some kids were sent home for wearing highlights or additional hair, like extra hair extensions, you know, like braids, which was rather unusual because, you know, like I said, our hair is much harder to deal with, and braids seem to fit us more. Look at Dr. Drake's braids, which are a very beautiful thing, by the way.
I remember several years back in Harris County, if you ever been to downtown to the criminal courthouse or the juvenile courthouse, you know, you have the individuals that do security. So at some point in time, and you may want to check on this, they said that you can no longer wear hair that was, and they use the term natural, not meaning in our natural state, but they wanted hair to look like it was yours. So the individuals, the women that were wearing like the long blonde hair or just, we'll say, different hairstyles, they stopped them from doing that. And they were no longer allowed to come to work. Again, we're talking about a courthouse, and they were no longer allowed to wear the different, what they call types of hairstyles when coming to work.
That's really interesting because I know in 2009, when I started working for the federal government, I was a forensic chemist for DEA. I knew that when I went for that interview, I had to have my hair, I have naturally curly hair, but I had to have that hair slicked back in the bun, or I had to flat iron, you know, the bejesus out of my hair the night before to make sure that it was slick, straight, you know, and what was considered professional. And so I only felt comfortable to wear my natural hair out after I had, you know, gotten acclimated to the environment and really gotten some type of acceptance. But still, when it was time to go to court or anything like that, or anything that was deemed professional, my natural hair wasn't considered professional. At least that's the way I felt. So I know. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was just from the public school standpoint is we've had to do a lot of professional development on cultural responsiveness in terms of, because we have a lot of our educators, because, you know, we don't have a whole lot of African-American teachers in the pipeline to teach, right? We have a shortage as it relates to minorities in the educational field. So if we have a shortage, that means that we have the other ethnicities that are in place or in capacity to be teachers. So we're having to do a lot of cultural responsiveness training, because what they consider, like, for example, some of our students have braids, right? So when the braids have been up for a while, the edges are uncontrollable. So a lot of our students like to wear bandanas or some type of headgear that will keep the edges laid down. And so we've had teachers that say, for example, a teacher say, well, I have biracial grandkids and I use gel to slick it down. Well, if you have 4C, which is your curly hair, gel won't do that, right? And so we have to have training just to let them know that what they may consider that is easy is not really easy. And then also, do our kids have access, if they're in these underserved populations, do they even have access to go get gel, right? And even some gel, like I said, won't even put the 4C down because it's curly. So just making sure that our teachers are definitely culturally aware of our students. Like in this area is predominantly African-American students. So we are constantly having to say what you may be used to or how you were reared in those very highly affluent neighborhoods is different here with our minority underserved population.
Yeah, I think that's especially important, the cultural responsive, because I've noticed some students, my niece, some students begin to think that there's something wrong with their hair. My niece told her mom that she wanted to straighten her hair like a classmate because she felt like she was out of place. Her mom was like, no, you're beautiful. Your hair is perfect the way it is. So.
And Chloe mentioned in the chat that she has experienced it as well, hair discrimination. At her corporate job, Chloe's mentioned that she has red, natural curly hair. It's beautiful, y'all. Super beautiful. And it's even brought up on her work performance review as unprofessional appearance. So thanks for sharing that, Chloe.
Yeah, and I just wanted to chime in on that as well, because I've been at a high school for about 12 years, and I can remember one particular day, I was actually called to the office, and remind you, I'm like, why am I being called to the office? And come to find out, they were saying that my hair was red. Now, remind you, at this time, I have never dyed my hair. It was just my natural color of my hair. And so when I explained to the principal that I haven't dyed my hair, because at that time it was an issue that your hair had to be a natural color hair. And so my question is, okay, you see I'm African American. That don't mean that my hair can't have a tint to it. Now, if a Caucasian person, their hair can be red or blonde, but you're saying that my hair had to be a natural color. Well, technically red is a natural hair color, but you're calling me into the office because you see I'm an African American female and I have a tint to my hair. So that's discrimination. And that just shows how long this issue has been going on. That's over 12 years ago. And we still facing issues, if not worse, of discrimination just because of your hair. You're not being judged according to your performance in education. You've been judged according to your natural hair, something that grows from your head that you don't have any control over.
And since we're talking about the school issues, thanks Denise for that comment, that made me think about, so for you, D'Amica, as we talk about these policies, a lot of times when I see these stories in the headlines, I mean, I'm like, wow, this is happening. A kid can't, participate in a wrestling competition because they have dreadlocks or they are being discriminated against. Sometimes we, the public, are not aware of these things that are even policies within the schools. So what types of things can we do at a local level to ensure that these policies that are outdated are not being used to discriminate against our kids?
You noted exactly, they're outdated. So there is definitely reform that needs to take place. And so what we do is we raise awareness in our communities. Everywhere that I've had the pleasure of being, I feel like each stakeholder has their right respective places and a voice. And so I like to activate that voice by inviting them to our committees that we form. So we have a discipline committee. And so a part of that is students, parents, counselors, teachers. It informs everyone. We invite everyone so that we can hear collectively what concerns are, and we can go back and revisit those policies. And so always hear parents don't want to be involved, but each campus I've had the pleasure of being, when we called them out, we would have 50 to 60 participants come out, and they would be very vocal in their approach about what needs to be eradicated or what needs to be revisited. So I think just promoting and getting the awareness out there to let parents know and students they have a voice. And the only way we're going to seek the change is if we come together collectively and we raise our concerns. So if we are not at the table, we become a part of the menu. So
very, very true.
So I someone had sent me an article about a mother, and she had sent her 4-year-old son, 4, to school. It was a Providence St. Mel school, and this is it's in Chicago. It's the west side of Chicago. And so she attended the school back in the 70s. And so she remembered when she was in school back then, you know, they did have some different issues and policies. So she sent her 4-year-old to school with the braids. They said the braids were not acceptable. So she changed and put him into a ponytail. They said the ponytail was not acceptable. So, you know, they went to the back and forth, and the copy of the student handbook for that school says you're not permitted to wear braids, dreadlocks, twists, high top boxes, or fades. Okay. So fades, we know where that's going. And so this was in March. And so they went back and forth, and that is the school policy. It's in the school handbook. So at the end of all this, the school said that at the end of the year, they will revisit the policy. Didn't say they would change it. They said they would revisit the policy. But we're talking about a 4-year-old child. This is not a child, not to say that one correlates with the other, but this is not a child that had behavior issues. There was nothing going on, but she sent a 4-year-old to school, and they did indeed, when it was on, I believe it was the Today Show, and they said, yes, indeed, it is our policy and it's in the handbook. And they stood firm on what's in their handbook. And it was just like, really? Like, so no one, I guess, challenged the handbook up until now. And so they didn't feel the need to change the handbook.
Wow, that's crazy. And this is happening all over the country. And I want to follow up on that comment. Thanks, Ms. Daniel. Jennifer, you worked on the Brookings report. I've read over that, and some of the numbers in there are like crazy, you know. So some of the, you know, we look at the clear discrimination that's going on in that report. What are some of the things, you know, as we look at the passing of the Crown Act, that we could look at? What are some recommendations in that report that you guys wrote moving forward?
Thank you so much for that question. One of the very first recommendations that we suggested was to enact a moratorium on discretionary suspension. So get rid of the subjective reasons why students are being suspended. There should be no reason why a student has to miss valuable class time for subjective things such as their hair, being on the cell phone, things of that nature. And there have been a few different school districts that have implemented that, where they have gotten rid of discretionary reasons for suspending stuff, and there has been a decrease in the number of suspensions, which we know that will happen, but as well as it's necessary to look at, even with the elimination of discretionary suspensions, making sure that it still isn't disparately impacting Black students. A couple more of our other recommendations was to build an infrastructure for the collection and analysis of school discipline data. That is something that both myself and Melissa, we ran into when we were working on different projects regarding school discipline, is the data. Texas Education Agency has information available online, but once again, it's aggregate information. it doesn't have been broken down by specific detailed reasons. In order to get the specific reasons why children are being suspended or expelled or placed in disciplinary alternative programs, you have to reach out to that particular school district and reach out to that particular superintendent, and then kind of trickle down and try to go to the different schools and things like that. So it would be nice if we could build an infrastructure for the collection and analysis of that data. And there's a couple more recommendations that are listed in that article, and I dropped the article in the chat box as well. Such things as focus groups. Those would be very beneficial. That kind of hits back on what Damika was talking about, how they're doing professional development and culturally responsive different things. It would be good to have focus groups more tailored towards that as well. And there's a few more recommendations. I don't want to read through all of them, but those are kind of the main ones that we highlighted.
All right, thank you for that. And we actually have that link to that document in the chat box. So if you have any questions or want to read further, we have some information there. Now I want to kind of switch gears and talk to some of my faculty on here. So I have Dr. Robin Jackson, who's at PV, and I also have Miss Alicia Daniel, who's at Clark Atlanta, so HBCUs. All right. So I know my experiences as being a faculty member and working with students, and I know being at a HBCU, I felt like I was at Sam Houston State before. I've been at different PWIs, but coming home to a HBCU, it felt good. It felt like home. It felt like I could wear my natural hair. I felt more comfortable. I'm just going to be honest with you on that. But when you guys as educators at an HBCU, what advice do you provide to your students when they're worried about, leaving that home, that safe environment where they can, wear the natural hairstyles and it's all love, and going into corporate America or going into different institutions that may not give them, embrace those hairstyles the same way?
I think some of it really has to do with the first step is you as the individual and what you are willing to accept. So I remember, as Jasmine, you said, when I had the big afro and I would go into an interview and I knew, or it was an agency where there were going to be white individuals, I would press my hair. Or if I had braids, I would take them out. But this is the issue. We are conforming. Mm-hmm. And so why did I press my hair? Why did I take my braids out? Another thing in the natural hair community is a lot of us, when we have events, we press our hair. So if we have a wedding, we press our hair. If we're going to something else, we press our hair. So why do we do that? We're conforming. And again, I've done it. I will press my hair, get the interview, but day one, I'm walking in there with whatever I have because I already have it. So, so I'm going, I'm gonna make you think, but so you have to be comfortable with it. And you have to, one thing that we as African-American females, I'm just gonna say that, we have to be comfortable. Why should I'm Alicia with pressed hair or the afro or the braids. And so first we have to be comfortable with that. So that's what, I tell my students. But at the same time, this is America with 3 Ks. This is America. So if you want to go into that job interview with your braids or with whatever, you have to remember this is still America with 3 Ks. So do you go into the interview with pressed hair or braids and you speak intelligently, etc.? Or do you go into the interview with this gold hair all the way down, whatever it is? You set yourself up for that. It is what it is. And let's be clear, white or not, if you come to me with this gold hair, and I'm just using that, whatever it is, you know, let's be honest, we're still going to have the same, not as bad, but we're still going to think about it as well. So I just say, look presentable. And we know what presentable is. Some of them honestly don't know what presentable is.
True.
Being at HBCU, Clark Atlanta University, you're not coming in my classroom with that bonnet on. You're not. You know, we see them walk in the streets with the bonnet on. You're not coming in my classroom with that bonnet on. So, you know, we kind of have to mold them before they go out. Some of them don't know. Some of them think it's okay to walk in the streets with the bonnet and those furry slippers. They don't know, but it's my job.
Yeah, they think it's cute.
Yeah, it's my job, and I take the personal responsibility that, you know, you're not coming in my classroom with that on, you know. And it's different because when I first moved back to Georgia, I was at a PWI. I was at the University of West Georgia, and so my colleagues were different. You know, my colleagues, you know, the uncomfortableness of, oh, I like your hair. You know, that's their uncomfortable speech of, you just didn't know what else to say. So,
oh, your hair has grown so much in 2 days.
Right, right. That's pretty. Or, you know, oh, you cut your hair. Or, you know, so.
My personal favorite, you washed your hair today.
Right. So, you know, we have to prepare them. And again, as a professor at a HBCU, I take personal responsibility in preparing them.
So to kind of follow up, a lot of what she just said is essentially, I guess you could say, my outlook and how I approach things as a professor of criminal justice and students who are looking to go into criminal justice. You know, I have both conversations with them. I have the conversation of, you know, sometimes you have to just play the game. You might have to go in there with looking a certain way so that you can get the job. And then once you get the job, you do what you do. However, if that's not what you want to do, if it's a matter of you don't want to put heat to your hair, you don't want to do whatever to your hair, then at the very least, go in, make sure you look professional. You know, if you're wearing your natural hair, like I have my ponytail poof, I have times when I've gone into a job interview or I've done something, instead of having it up like this, I'll pull it back so that it looks more like a bun. Even at where I'm at now, when I went on my interview for PV, I ironed my hair and it turned into a helmet the very next day because I forgot humidity and heat. You know, it reminded me of where I was at. But, you know, I give them both points of view, I guess. But then I also remind them, you know, hey, again, don't forget, you're going into a very conservative field. Yes, we might be academics, but even in academia, some of our colleagues and counterparts that don't look like us are a lot more conservative than they might let on. The other thing that I do, and I've had to do this here recently, is I've told some of my young ladies, pick something, you know, and what I mean by that, some of you know where I'm going with this. What I mean by that is you can't go into an interview with the long stiletto nails. And by the long stiletto nails, I mean the ones that look like something that Freddy Krueger has on his fingers. And they can be some, you know, some bright off the wall color and your hair is blue or magenta. You know, you're gonna have to pick one. And typically I would tell them, you know, if you want to keep your nails, okay, that's fine. But you need to maybe get a French manicure instead of whatever it is, you know, I don't do nails like that. So, you know, but tone it down. And then once you get the job, if you want to, you know, bring it back up a notch, do it, but do it in increments and levels. Let them get to know you first. And I let them know that, yeah, that's unfair. They should judge you or they should evaluate you based on your merit, but that's not the world we live in. You know, do you want to be out here, you know, do you want to have the latest hairstyle, the latest whatever, or do you want to have a job so you can pay for that hairstyle later on? You know, again, that's us conforming. You know, it shouldn't be like that, but sometimes you have to play the game in order to get in and maybe have some kind of impact or make some type of change, because they're going to look for an excuse not to hire you. You know, I can remember my first job out of college. You know, this is before social media and all of that type of stuff. I think MySpace might have been out there. I don't remember. But, you know, my name is Robin Jackson. I always put Robin D. Jackson on my CVs. And I'll never forget, I walked in and I remember my boss, the person who became my eventual boss, and another girl, a colleague, they were bug-eyed when they saw me. And I found, and I suspected why. Later on, after they had a few drinks in them, they said, "Oh yeah, we were so glad when we saw you walking down the hallway because we saw your name and we thought you were going to be white. Well, you're black." Yeah. Same. I had the same head tilt, Dr. Drake. But because it was a nonprofit, they also got credit for me being a minority and a woman. And so they were like, "Yeah, and you interviewed well, and you did." And I'm just like, okay. So, you know, I relate those kind of things to my students to remind them that, hey, yeah, you go in looking a certain way. And then once you get in there, then you do what you want to do. Well, not what you want to do, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just to kind of piggyback on that a little bit, how we're talking about conforming and stuff like that, and how we probably have all been there. You have a big meeting come up and the first thing you do is look at your calendar and try to figure out, can I get a beauty shop appointment in? What can I do? But one thing is, since last year, since America wants to be so woke and they have all these statements they put out last year, I felt for me personally that I could be unapologetic with myself. And for the first time last year when I had an important meeting, I actually wore my feed-in braids, my good old set it off braids, cornrows to the back. And I remember I was nervous thinking to myself, I'm about to show up on this important meeting with my cornrow braids. And, you know, sometimes it's just about calling those agencies on these on those impact statements that they make. And hey, don't judge me on my hair. That you say you're, you know, Black Lives Matter. Well, accept me with these set it off braids as I show up on this important meeting. Because I'm not about to go to the beauty shop and I've had these braids only for a week. I got another week left in these bad boys.
And I like to add to that as well. You can always wrap up a pretty package and have the gift just as messed up as possible. So we should not be judged according to the type of hair that we have. If you can get the job done, that's what matters. Now, I'm not saying it's when we talk about hair, like how a lot of the colleagues have said, it's about maintenance of your hair. Regardless if you have 4C, if your hair is straightened, it's very important that you maintain that hair, because you can have straight hair and your hair don't look presentable. You still have to maintain that hair. That's what matters when it comes to good hair and bad hair. It's not so much the texture of my hair, it's by how it looks and how I maintain my hair.
It's very true. Very
awesome.
So Denise is stirring the pot a little bit. So we've been talking about other people and how they perceive our hair, but what about our internal biases? So I grew up in Louisiana and we have that good hair and bad hair versus nappy versus curly sort of thing going on. Even in my own household, we've had, you know, these discussions. So what are some of the things that we could do as a people to change the way sometimes you realize as you grow some of the terminology that we use. Sometimes it's we have to self-correct ourselves as some of the things that we're saying. Oh, she has good hair. Oh, her hair is kind of nappy. So what are some of you guys' opinions on some of the things that we need to do as a people ourselves to respect different types of hair textures before we can even look to other people outside of our group to respect us and our hair choices?
The first thing, go ahead, Angelica, go ahead.
Okay. One of the things that I would say is it's very important on how we even label it showing of ourselves before we try to do that to someone else. So in this instance where I've seen parents, and you can tell me that my hair is beautiful all day, but you only wear your hair straight, or you only call yourself beautiful when your hair is straight. So regardless of what you say, I'm going to have a certain outlook. And I personally remember even in certain situations where knowing that I think it was one time I just made up my mind, I'm just gonna dye my hair red. And my aunt, who reminds me so much of Jennifer, but in this sense, it was totally different. It's because they're so professional, but it was in this sense that she specifically said, hey, make sure it's not permanent, because you said that you want to be a lawyer, but you're not gonna be able to be a lawyer if you have red hair. And I was like, well, why not, right? Like whether my hair is red or straightened or not. And so it really made me kind of battle with that, because it made me understand that whether my hair is red or whether my hair is straightened or whether my hair is whatever, it didn't make me feel like I would be, instead of affirming me and saying like, hey, okay, we know this, you look beautiful with it or not, but this is how you might want to present yourself, in the sense of where you see some of the other professionals have already stated. I think that that's really important, is how we speak about ourselves, and then how we speak about those that are around us.
I think, you asked a question, Dr. Drake, which is really like a rhetorical question, because I don't know, we have so many, we as people have so many internal issues, good hair, bad hair, light skin, dark skin, and Dr. Drake, you know my issues with that. We're just some of, north, whether you're from the north, the south, Louisiana, what your people look like, don't look like. But again, it's what we're accepting of, and I don't know where that starts. It just somehow has to start within our people and generations. That's kind of like asking, well, how do we end racism? I don't know. It's just we just have to start somewhere, and hopefully it will trickle down.
I think if any place, anywhere that we start, maybe we start at home, with what we tell each other, what we say to our kids. I don't have kids, but I can remember growing up, the things that I love the most about myself are the things that my mom always highlighted and made a point to say, girl, you so-and-so, you got this and you got that, and one of those things for a while was my hair, until, we started doing the relaxers, and, and this kind of also goes to the point of, watching what other people do. My mom had a curl, so I wanted a curl, until I got made fun of, and our own people made fun of me with my curl, called me DJ Quick and everything else, which was kind of traumatic as a 12 and 13-year-old. And then I wanted to, go get the relaxer and all that kind of stuff. But my mom would always tell me, you have beautiful hair. You have beautiful, thick hair. And every time I'd go to a beauty shop, anywhere to get my hair done, I'd get that reaction of, oh, this is a lot of hair. You got some beautiful hair, but yes, let your soul glow is right. It glowed and it shined too. It was a pretty curl, but hey. Anyway, as I would go to beauticians, and even still now, I always get that, man, you got a lot of hair. It's beautiful hair, but you've got a lot of hair. And when I finally actually stopped and looked at my hair one day, in the PhD program, because when you're in that program, you don't have as much time to do certain things. And so my hair had grown out, and I got to actually see it, and I got to see what my mom was talking about and what other people were talking about. So, making sure that I loved my own hair, but also that affirmation from growing up, what my mom would say and what others would say, that's where it started for me. So I think as we have kids and we have little girls and little boys, making sure that they understand and know that their hair is beautiful, but also putting things out there, which is starting to happen now. It wasn't necessarily the case for my generation, but putting things out there now that they can see that normalizes our hair within our own community, because we can't make other folks accept our hair if we don't accept it ourselves. And there's plenty of us out there that do not accept our hair. When I first started going natural, the driver's license picture I have now, I'll never forget, walked in, the woman that I used to work with when I was a correctional officer. She had a few little choice comments and words. She's like, I could never go natural. All that fuzz in my hair. Yeah. And I just shook my hair and took my picture and kept it moving. I didn't like her anyway. There's a reason why she was no longer working where we worked at. But, you know, we got to start within ourselves and within our own community before we can make others accept us. That's kind of the way I see it.
And I would like to, oh, you can go, Melissa.
Yeah. In my opinion, I love my natural hair and I think we should be proud of it, but it's also okay to want to relax your hair. And I think, especially in our community, we tend to project our own personal views on others. Like if you feel very strongly about something, let's say some people like relaxing their hair, you go out. Only in the Black community, people will shame you for wanting to have softer, straighter hair, but some people just like it that way, and I think that's okay too.
I like the versatility of our hair. I like the fact that I can, if I want to wear my hair like this today, I can. If I want to go and flat iron my hair, I can have my hair going down my back tomorrow. If I want, I can go in and go get some faux lock. I can do so many different things with my hair that other people cannot do. So, you know, but I think you're right. We do tend to project certain things on other people. We get shamed if your hair is natural. You get shamed if you decide to relax your hair. I say it's your hair growing out of your head. You do what you want to do with it.
I agree.
It seems that we all here kind of collectively, to a certain extent, we understand that we should embrace Black hairstyles and choices. However, how do we go across the aisle when we have people who are in positions of power and people who are making the hiring decisions? So where we may understand these things and these conversations, and we could probably talk at length about it, how do you get those people to understand, you know, or to change the narrative or change policies as we move forward? Because that's when it matters. A lot of my students say, Dr. Drake, I'm not doing that. I'm not straightening my hair for that interview because I got to keep it real. You know, I say, you can keep it real and be unemployed. You know, because unfortunately, I understand your hair choices, but the person who's making a decision to hire you or to let you into this particular program, they may not feel the same way. So how do we increase like understanding with those other groups? I'm not sure there's an easy answer for that.
I'll start off.
If I may,
I'll always say.
If I may pose my, all right, go.
You can go, Angelique.
Okay, let's go out. Let's go, Angelica, and then we'll go to Denise afterwards.
You're muted, Angelica.
Yeah, Angelica, you're still on mute.
Hello, can you hear me? Awesome. So the idea that I would pose, I think that what I saw in this article with the ABA was that it was expanding this idea of what is race. That is also things that are historically paired together with our race, which include hair, right? That's part of cultural and ethnic pieces of the Black community. So I think that that's a big part of it. And I also think we talk about, and it's one of the recommendations also, but we talk about the importance of educating that community and educating them that natural hair is not, I think they still think that it's a fad, that the fact that someone wears a twist out is just a cool fad, just like if someone wanted to wear a mohawk in the 80s or something. And so I think that a better understanding that this is actually how it naturally grows. Like, I don't know if they need a science breakdown of it, but it's actually how it naturally grows out of our head. So if I need to then twist it so that, you know, it doesn't get, you know, that it doesn't start tangling or something like that, just know that it's not a hairstyle per se, but it's one of the ways that I can treat my natural hair. And I think that that's a lack of understanding. I think that they're still seeing it as, okay, well, if you really wanted it natural, then it would just be like, you know, all compact. I'm like, no, there's different levels to that. And I think that that makes sense to me, but growing up in Minnesota with a population that wasn't so big that looked like me, that it was really important seeing them. They really did not understand. Like, it was magical to them, like super scientific, this thing that had never been seen. And so I think that although to us it makes so much sense, we really kind of sadly have to put ourselves in the lens of those that see us, that this is just something that does not make sense at all. And so breaking
And then I just wanted to add to what she was just saying, how it's important for us to educate them, because we can't expect them to know anything if we don't teach them or show them. One thing about it is our hair always have had purpose. If you look at the history of where cornrows come from, you'll think about how more of a protective style, it was a survival technique. African-American women would actually put rice in their kids' hair and braid it down. So that way, if they was to get sold, they had some kind of sense of, okay, at least my child has something to eat. Or I knew that if I was to get sold, I'm able to survive for a little bit more time. And so even now, fast forward to our current era that we in now, we use protective style for convenience. A working mother, she may have a daughter, she may not have time to do her hair every single day. So it's convenient for her to take her daughter to the hairstylist and get it braided down, and she can wear that hairstyle for 2 to 3 weeks, and then she's able to continue her daily duties. And so it's important to even educate those who don't have natural hair or don't understand, like a lot of our colleagues have said, it doesn't matter if your hair is straight or curly, it's more of what works best for you. It's not always a fad. It's not always about, oh, my hair is straight, so I think I look this way, if my hair is curly. In my high school years, my hair was straight majority of the time. I didn't start wearing my natural curls until I got older and started actually going to the hairstylist that actually taught me about my hair. Because even what we realize as African-American women, we don't all have the same hair texture. So what one African-American woman may do may not be able to work on my hair. I might not be able to use the same products. My hair might not be able to, I might not have the same curl, but as long as I'm looking at what you have, I'm never appreciative of what I have. So that's another thing I would add. You should always you should look at what you do have versus what everybody else has. And then that way you be able to be appreciative of what you have. And that will be able to show other people, like, I'm proud of what I have. And it's going to be a ricochet effect. If you're proud of what you have, everybody else going to play off of that confidence. If you walking around ashamed of what your hair looks like, oh, I'm gonna straighten my hair, I don't like my curls. Of course, everybody else is going to feed off of that energy that you have, because you don't even value what the curls that you have, or you don't like your hair being straight. So that's all I wanted to add.
All right, so we've had a really good discussion. So we have like 5 minutes. So I do want to take some comments or questions from the audience. I wanted to give them a chance to ask some questions if they had any, or any comments. So anybody in the audience have anything you want to add to this discussion? I mean, because, you know, we could talk all day on this topic.
Well, I do want, since they're silent, one thing that is also important, I have a friend that works in adoptions, and something we need to do as, you know, people of other races are willing to adopt our Black children, is to have things such as hair workshops, you know, even two parent households where both parents are males. They don't know how to braid hair. They don't know how to do hair. So community outreach is important. You know, so that's something that we could do in our local communities. You know, you could volunteer at the Y if you know how to do hair, volunteer how to braid hair. You know, when we go into these school systems, you know, everybody knows that you want to use somebody else's address and to get your child in a certain school district, you know, that has repercussions. So I remember growing up as a child in Buffalo, New York, I never went to school with a Black kid until my senior year in high school. And so my hair was different all the way up. And so, you know, I had to wear my hair differently to conform, and my parents had to do my hair differently to conform. But that's something that we can do as outreach, is volunteer to see who's in need of assistance, because they don't know how to do their Black child's hair.
I wanted to interject this, is that more school districts have become very intentional about the practices that they are doing. So many of them, when you talk about policies, they have in districts established what they call a racial equity office. And so with the racial equity work, they are intentional about passing policies and procedures that would not directly target our African-American kids or indigenous kids or population. So I think the work coming from the public school system and maybe even the private sector, when you talk about different policies being revisited, is that they are becoming more intentional with the racial equity work.
If I may also add, I think that it's really important when I was looking at the different recommendations that were shown in the Brookings report, recommendation 3 that spoke about utilizing focus groups, I think that it's so important to hear from these kids. We do talk about parents, yes, but to hear from these kids, because even this past Sunday, which is just so timely, some children that come from a very affluent place, right? At my church, they were playing teacher, right? And the whole of their skit was this teacher that one Black boy and these 2 Black girls, this teacher that was going through punitive measures. That was the whole thing. And so even to the point of calling the police. And I said, is that really what they do? And he's like, yeah, that's what they do. And they are in a good background. And so I think it's so important to see them because this is them with no adult, right? This is what they played together. And so I think that it was so important to look at that. And then also once those focus groups are had, and then we get that community outreach, which was another recommendation. I think it's so important that when we're teaching and having these equity groups, that it's so important to circle back around to those communities, right? To make sure, okay, is what we're putting in actually good with you? Not just what you said last month, but is it still good with, would this even help your community? Right. And I think that that's really important so that we're not just spitting things out so that it can be checked off the list, but that is actually
very applicable.
Okay, I have one last question from the chat box and I'm going to respect everyone's time. From Dominique. So the question is, how do we address people within the Black community that view your natural hair as negative and will constantly try to tell you things like, you need to do something with your hair when it's now pressed, you know, not pressed or faded in accordance with the perception of what is presentable?
My mind said it's like, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, that's just continued education. The thing is, again, we have to accept it. And, you know, I have to accept if you want to press your hair, that's fine. You have to accept if I want to wear my hair natural or if I want to wear braids, that's fine. So so when the question is, how do you address people in the Black community? Just own up to how you want to wear it. If you want to wear a high top fade, own up to it. Whatever you're going to wear. If you want to wear your braids, own up to it. And that's it. You know, it's your hair, it's your body. And so if someone says something in the community, you just have to own your choices.
Yeah, that's, you know, I would echo that. And then also kind of like what I said earlier about when I had that former colleague who made the comment about my hair. I even had a boss when I was working K through 12. I had a Black principal. I came in with micro braids and she did not like it. She absolutely hated it. She thought everyone's hair needed to be pressed and needed to look a certain way. I just was like, okay, well, that's your opinion and I can't really change your opinion, just like you can't change what I choose to do with my hair. You acknowledge and just say, hey, that's what you think, but this is what I want to do. This is what I'm comfortable with. And like I said earlier, shake your hair and keep it moving. Don't go by what everybody else wants you to do. If you do, you'll never be happy.
Yeah, and I would like to also add really quickly that I was reading this book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and they were specifically speaking about how they looked at their children, right? This is not a Black household, but nonetheless, it was looking at how do they view their children. And specifically, I want to add this little blurb. It says that they saw him as fundamentally adequate and able to cope with life. And so they stopped trying to protect him against the ridicule of others. And in that, they saw their child blossom. And so I think that obviously there are different parameters that we have on ourselves, but I think that when we're addressing people in the Black community, that we have to be patient indeed, because it's kind of an individual revelation that people need to have, that my child and me can be adequate in my own mind. And when I see myself as adequate, it's easier for me to see my child as adequate. And when they see themselves as adequate, they're no longer held to like these community and social norms, bound to them at least, right? You can work within them, but you don't need to be bound to them. And so I think, sadly, it's one of those things of I have to have patience that everyone needs to have their own type of revelation.
Well, that's perfect. That's a perfect way for us to end our discussion, I think. And I just want to thank all of the panelists. I want to thank Ms. Jennifer Bourgeois, Ms. Alicia Daniel, Ms. Damika Simmons, Ms. Angelica Alunkwa, Dr. Robin Jackson, Ms. Denise Brown, and Ms. Melissa Quinde for being an excellent panel. I think we've had a great discussion. I also want to thank our Dean of the School of Public Affairs, Dr. George Kia, for offering us, the platform to be able to discuss research and real policy issues that need reform and change. And so thank you as well to the entire audience for sticking here with us and giving us comments and really, engaging in this conversation. So with that, thanks everyone and enjoy your afternoons.
Thank you for having us.
Pleasure being on this panel with you guys. Have a great day.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you for